Hello everyone. We'll be discussing about the characteristics of graphical and web user interface. So before knowing the characteristics of graphical interface and web user interface, the first thing is we have to understand what is the user interface. So user interface is nothing but it's a media through which the user and the system interact. For that interaction, we will take the help of different types of user interface. So in the coming slide, we will see what are the different types of user interfaces. At present point of view, in this chapter, we'll try to understand the interaction styles, the concept of direct manipulation, the characteristics of graphical interface, the characteristics of web interface, web page versus the web application design, the general principle of user interface design. First is we'll try to see what are the different interaction styles. As I told, user interface is nothing but what? The interaction between the user and then the system. So there are different styles of interaction. One is the command line, menu based, form fill, direct manipulation, anthropomorphic styles. First one is command line. So as you can see on the screen, with the help of commands, user is to interact with the system. The main drawback of command line interface is nothing but it's very difficult to remember all the commands. And suppose if you are not able to remember or recall the command, you may get what errors when you're trying to request some data. To overcome this disadvantages, we have moved with respect to different types of interfaces. Next one is menu selection. So in menu selection interface, you can see there are different menus. When you select an icon, that is when you select a menu, a drop down list will be placed, and whichever menu you want, you can select it. Then form fill in. So this is another way of user interface in which you can enter some data which you are requesting so that the request can be processed by the system. It is in the form of form. Next is direct manipulation. So it is also one type of user interface where user is interacting with the system through the fingertips. The best example is you can consider the zoom in and then zoom out. So in zoom in and zoom out, if you consider there are basically two types of manipulation. Direct manipulation means we user are directly involving in making the changes. Indirect means with the help of what? Other components we are trying to make the changes. So in direct manipulation, what exactly we are trying to do means with help of, that is me as a user, on my own I am going to make the changes. Or manipulation, what you call it. Changes is nothing but here manipulation. The example is if I want to zoom a screen, with the help of fingertip, just by increasing the distance or reducing the distance, I can zoom in or zoom out by placing the two fingers on the screen of the device. I can make the changes. That is called as what? Direct manipulation. If the same thing if I want to do with respect to indirect manipulation, I will take the help of the pointing device called as mouse. Then I'll go with respect to what? View. Then I'll be selecting the option called as zoom, and then in that I'll go with respect to zoom in and zoom out. The same operation in indirect the user itself is doing, but he is not doing on his own. He is taking the help of what? The pointing devices. Whereas in direct manipulation, he is doing on its own with help of what? The fingers by touching on the screen. Next is anthropomorphic. So here the communication takes place with the help of spoken natural languages and hand gesture. So the best example you can take is Alexa. So here we are giving some instruction, the device is listening to that and it is performing the request. And through the hand gestures also what you can make the request and the system responds for that. So these are what different ways of interfaces which are used for communication between the user as well as what the system. Now let us understand among the various type of what interfaces, we will try to understand here what is graphical user interface. So graphical user interface is nothing but it's an interface used for the communication between the system and the user with the help of menus, icons. Okay, the definition of graphical user interface is user interacting with the system, that is electronic devices, with the help of menus, icons, images, drop down, drop up, all those things. And here when you go with respect to the graphical user interface, it is very interactive, it is very attractive also, because of its animation, because of its geometrical objects, because of its variation in the color, the user get attracted. So most of the time, wherever you choose, whichever devices you take, everywhere you find the GUI, that is the graphical user interface, as a front end view for the communication between the user and the device. So here these are some of the components of your graphical user interface, in which we have slider, status bar, tabs, icons, manipulating window manipulating icons. So these are nothing but what some of the components of user interface, that is the graphical user interface. Next is why the graphical user interface is popular. Why graphical user interface is popular means, the one main advantage is it provides three-dimensional look, whereas the text-based system provides only one-dimensional look. And here the information can appear or disappear through the windows, floating windows and navigation. That means you have come across the slide bar or drop down list. Whichever data you want, that you can view. Whichever data you want, you can what? Scroll up or scroll down. According to our requirement, we can make the changes. And when you go with respect to what? The graphical user interface, there won't be much stress for the user. When you go with respect to command based interface, there you have to remember the commands. You have to type the commands. You have to recall the commands. If you type the command, error will be present. Error will be occurring. Then there won't be any interaction.